This episode is brought to you by Marshalls, where you never have to compromise between quality and price. The buyers at Marshalls hustle hard, working to bring you great deals on brand name and designer pieces. Because Marshalls believes everyone deserves access to the good stuff. Visit a Marshalls store near you or shop online at marshalls.com.
You're about to make a trade. Which you do you listen to? Is it get optioning those options? Or let's do a little research. Learn more at finra.org/trade-smart.
Welcome to Her Extraordinary Life by Design, where we celebrate women who are shaping their lives one extraordinary day at a time. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, self-care coach for women who are ready to make self-care a priority to support them in life and business. Every week, I'll be speaking with inspiring women from various walks of life who will share their personal journeys and will discover how they have fearlessly carved their own paths as business owners, passionately pursuing their dreams and creating a meaningful impact on their communities. So let's get started. Do you ever find yourself surrounded by people, yet still feel like you're on the outside looking in? Like on paper, it seems like you have the friends, the networks, maybe even the professional circles you once dreamed of, but inside it feels like you're performing just to belong. Meaning you smile, you nod, you show up, but there's a quiet question running underneath it all. Do these women really see me? And then you follow up with, and do I even feel safe enough to be myself here? I know that experience well. Growing up, there were many moments that left me questioning if I was enough, if I belonged, or if I was just tolerated. Those small cuts, the exclusion, the comparisons, even the betrayals, shaped the way I related to women for years. And even as I built communities later in life, that old story of not enough still had a way of creeping in. Hello, and welcome back to Her Extraordinary Life by Design podcast. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, and in today's solo episode, I'm going to talk about how community shapes who you are, and more importantly, the power that you have to choose differently who you let into your circle. Now, I'm going to share some lessons I've carried from some of my early experiences as a young girl, how they influenced the way I interacted with women, and my conscious choice to do things differently so that now I build relationships that support my peace, my purpose, and my growth. And I hope that by the end of this conversation, you'll walk away with a clearer lens for recognizing the communities that drain you and the confidence to choose the ones that help you rise. Looking back, I can see that some of my earliest ideas about belonging and self-worth weren't formed in classrooms or from what adults told me, although some of those memories weren't fun either. However, as I started reflecting back on my life and this fear that I had about being in rooms with women who were successful, I realized that my beliefs were shaped in those everyday moments with other girls. The invitations, the comments, the glances, the kinds of things that seem small on the surface, but they leave a lasting imprint. And one of the very first moments I can remember that shifted something in me happened when I was about 11 or 12 years old. That awkward in-between age, where you're still figuring out who you are, where you fit in, and how you stack up against the girls around you. There was this girl who I'll call Susie, who came from a very well-to-do family. The kind with a big house, the newest clothes, and parents who seemed to always have everything, which meant she always had everything she ever wanted. She was one of those girls who carried a quiet kind of power without even realizing it. Everyone wanted to be in her circle. Now, I can remember so vividly one day at school when she was talking with me and another one of our friends, and right there in front of me, she invited my friend, or I should say our friend, to her birthday party that was coming up that weekend. Her words were warm, her face lit up with excitement, and then just silence. No invitation for me. She didn't even look my way. Now, it might sound small to someone else, but when you're that age, it's not just about missing a party, it's about what that missing invitation seems to say about you. In that moment, something inside me whispered, "You don't belong here. You're not one of them. You're not enough to be chosen." You see, I grew up in social housing to a single mother, and my friends would say that they weren't allowed to go into my housing development, I guess because of the rumors of what it meant to live there and the type of people who lived there. Now, my family didn't have much. I didn't have the nicest clothes, but they were clean and they were tidy, and I didn't have money to spend on a whim. But I never gave it a thought as meaning anything to where I grew up because we always had food on the table. We always had a roof over our head. We always had clothes on our back, and school was important. But standing there that day, as the invitation never came, I felt the divide between me and the girls who seemed to have everything. In my 12-year-old mind, I connected the dots in a way only a child can. They have money, they're invited. I don't have money, so I'm not worthy of belonging in their world. What's wild is how sticky those childhood moments can be. They don't just sting in the moment, they linger. They shape how you see yourself long after the sting fades. I started carrying myself like the girl on the outside looking in. I didn't push to be included. I didn't raise my hand to claim my space. I started hanging out actually with the rowdy crowd where I lived as I got into my older teenage years because they were the ones that pushed the envelope. Sometimes, they get into trouble, but they always made me feel like I belonged, like they saw me and they weren't judging me. And I quietly told myself that if I wasn't invited with the cool girls, it was because I didn't measure up. And so the more I believed that, the more I disconnected and leaned into my friendships with the ones who were like me, living in social housing, poor but never judgmental, who accepted me for who I was, and many who were boys who were just friends, of course, but I felt safe that they wouldn't push me away, which was how I viewed girls at the time. And if I wanted to be included with the cool girls, the more I started performing in subtle ways just to prove I was worthy of being included. But here's what I've learned over the years. Exclusion, especially at those impressionable ages, doesn't just leave you out of a single event. It rewrites the script of your belonging, of how you feel, of your feelings around belonging. Think about it. How many times have you walked into a room and you immediately felt yourself shrink just a little, even if no one has said a word? Or how often have you hesitated before speaking up in a group because somewhere inside you're still carrying the question of whether your voice truly belongs? Or maybe you might even be thinking of it this way. How many achievements have you dismissed because a part of you still ties your worth to being chosen rather than simply being who you are? You see, that birthday party that I never got invited to, it may seem like a passing childhood memory, but for me, it became one of the first defining moments where I attached my worth to whether someone else opened the door and said I belonged or not. And when you live with that story long enough, it doesn't matter how successful you look on the outside, because instead, inside, you're still bracing for the moment someone doesn't pick you. That's the quiet toll exclusion takes on self-esteem and self-worth. It tells you that you're not enough. And if you don't rewrite that script, it can follow you for years. And that wasn't the only time I felt the sting of not being enough. Those moments of exclusion had a way of repeating themselves in different forms as I got older. Sometimes it wasn't being left out, sometimes it was being noticed, but in a way that made me question if I even deserved the attention. One of the clearest memories of that came a few years later when I was about 16 or 17, and I was with a group of friends at a roller skating rink that we would often go to on Friday nights. I loved roller skating back then. It was one of the places where my friends and I would hang out, we'd laugh, we'd just be teenagers. And I remember one night so vividly because it started out feeling like something magical, right? Like the kind of moment that makes you feel seen in a way you didn't expect. I was skating with my friends when this boy came up to me and he asked me if my name was Leslie Bowles, which was my maiden name. And when I said yes, he told me his friend had gone to school with me and wanted to know if I would skate the last couples dance with him. So, of course, I said yes, not really knowing what to expect, but I was intrigued. When the last dance came, I found out his friend was someone that I'd gone to school with, that we'd actually grown up together for just a little while. His name was Steph. And we'd lost touch after I'd moved away, which was unfortunately something that happened often for me, moving away. And we moved often until I turned around 11. That's when we started to stay stable in one place. But anyway, seeing him again felt easy. It felt familiar and kind of exciting, because it was someone I had really thought a lot about. We were really, we were close at that time when we were kids. But now here I am, a teenage girl, and he was really good looking. Anyways, we skated together. We laughed about our childhood memories. And then, also we shared what we've been up to since we last saw each other. And for that small moment of time, I felt light. I felt like maybe I really did belong, right? But then the moment ended. And as I came back to my group of friends, one of the girls, who I'll call her Lisa, looked at me with this mix of surprise and disbelief and said, "How did you get him?" Like just 5 words, but those words, they landed like a gut punch, right? It wasn't curiosity, it was judgment. What she was really saying was, "You're not pretty enough. You're not desirable enough. You're not worthy enough for someone that looks like him to choose you." And the worst part about that is I believed her. I immediately went into defensive mode, scrambling to explain myself. I said, "Oh, no, it's not like that. We just grew up together. We went to school together. That's all." And so what I ended up doing is downplayed the connection, almost apologizing for being chosen as if I had to justify how it happened, as if I didn't deserve it on my own. And that moment planted another seed in me. The belief that any good thing that came my way had to be explained, that if someone noticed me, it couldn't possibly be because I was enough on my own. There always had to be a reason, a backstory, an excuse, right? And here's where I want to hold up this mirror for you and ask you, like, how many times have you received a compliment and immediately brushed it off, explaining why it wasn't really a big deal? Because even getting compliments can be hard sometimes for us to accept, especially if your worth is always, at the forefront, and maybe you don't believe that you're worthy of that. Or how often have you achieved something meaningful only to downplay it so that others around you wouldn't think you were getting too full of yourself? Or even how many moments of being chosen, acknowledged, or celebrated have you quietly diminished because deep down you didn't fully believe you deserved it? You see, that one moment of her asking me, "How did you get him?" may sound like teenage girl drama, but the truth is, it actually echoed for me for years. It followed me, but I didn't even know that. It taught me to shrink when I should have stood tall. It taught me to over explain myself instead of simply receiving. And it reinforced a belief that being chosen wasn't about who I was, but about whether others thought I was good enough, that I measured up. And when you live with that story, even as an accomplished woman, you can still find yourself making excuses for your own success, second guessing your wins, and questioning your worth in the moments that you should be celebrating the most. So now I have one more story to share with you because I think this one was the one that really hurt the most. I thought that being questioned about my worth in front of my friends made me shrink, but to be honest, betrayal took it a step further. Because at least with Lisa's comment, I still had my circle to go back to, right? Not everyone thought the way that she did. But what happens when the very friends that you thought you could count on suddenly turn their backs on you? That's a wound that runs even deeper. And I experienced that one too, not long after this. I was again 17 at the time and still spending most of my weekends at the skating rink. Again, that was our spot, the place where friendships were tested, where we laughed, where we thought our bonds were unshakable. And at the time, I was dating this guy. He was older. He was 4 years older than me. And I had been introduced to him by a friend that I'll call Sarah. One afternoon, I was at her house and he came to pick me up. He knew I was there and he drove over and he came to pick me up. And instead of being happy for me, she got really upset. Now, I didn't realize at the time that it bothered her so much because I was so into this guy. Like, it didn't even register to me that leaving was a bad idea. Anyways, she twisted the situation, saying that I was using her, and it didn't stop there. She actually went and told two of our other mutual friends of ours from the skating rink that I was using them too. I didn't know what she had said at first. I just knew that suddenly, without explanation, these two friends of mine who'd always been part of my circle stopped speaking to me. I remember it so vividly. I remember walking up to them one night on a Friday night. It was a skating night. I trying to say hello like I always had. And they usually were always so happy to see me, but this time they turned their backs on me, just like that. No words, no explanation, just silence, like I wasn't even there. I was invisible to them. And that silence lasted for 3 very long months. I don't know if you know what it's like to walk into a place where you once felt like you belonged only to feel invisible, like just to stand there, desperate for answers, replaying every intention in your head, trying to figure out what you did wrong, all while the people who you once laughed with act like you don't even exist. Like, I don't know if you've ever experienced that, but for me, I was left on the outside, not even given the dignity of an explanation. Like, they wouldn't even talk to me. But when they finally did talk to me, as I said, about 3 months later, they told me what Sarah had said. It really didn't undo the damage because by then the wound had already done its work. It confirmed to me what I'd already had always quietly believed all along, that I wasn't good enough to be chosen, right? That even when I thought I belonged, it could all be taken away in an instant, and that I couldn't trust females. That's how I mean, that is really truly the thing. I learned really a hard lesson believing that I could not trust girls. And here's the thing about betrayal, especially when it comes from people that you trust. It's not just about what they did, it's about the silence that follows. That silence that makes you question your worth even more than the betrayal itself. Because silence says you don't matter enough for an explanation. You're not worthy of the truth. You're not even worth words. And when you live through that as a teenager, it shapes the way you show up later in life. Because maybe you walk into new friendships half expecting they won't last. Or maybe you keep parts of yourself hidden, afraid of giving too much and being abandoned again. Or maybe you find yourself clinging too tightly, trying to prove that you're valuable enough to stay, for them to want you to stay. That skating rink silence wasn't just 3 months of lost friendship. It was 3 months of internalizing a belief that I had carried for years, that no matter how much I gave, I could still end up on the outside because I have always been an outsider. That's how I always saw myself. And that belief didn't just hurt me as a teenager, it bled into my adult relationships, my sense of belonging, and the way I had a distrust for women for a very, very long time after. Now, all of these experiences, the invitation that never came, the comment that cut deep, the silence that made me feel invisible, they didn't just fade with time. They stacked on top of each other until they built a pattern in me, a pattern of second guessing myself, of questioning my worth, and quietly wondering if I actually belonged in the rooms that I walked into. And even the ones I was invited into, sometimes I always looked around thinking, am I in the right place? And the more successful the women in the room were, the louder that self-doubt became. Because I would walk in wearing the smile, I would say the right things, but inside I was bracing for the moment that I'd be found out as being an imposter, that I didn't belong there, or that being overlooked, or simply reminded again that I wasn't enough to sit at that table. But here's the thing. As I reflected on where I was in my life, because I did a lot of deep reflection, I realized that I had two choices. I could either continue to carry those stories as my truth, letting them define the rest of my life and how I showed up in my life and the relationships that I had and the experiences that I had, or I could choose to embrace those moments as part of my story, not defining of me, right? They're not the whole story. They're part of my story. They're parts of my story, but they're not defining of me. And that I actually had the ability to rewrite how I wanted to live my life and what I chose to believe about myself. While we can't rewrite the past, we can absolutely 100% choose to live in a way that reflects what we want, not just what we had, right? Because again, we live in a world, I believe the world that we live in has a way to tell us that to hustle harder, right? It tells us to hustle harder, to climb higher, to prove ourselves at every turn. And yet, what really sustains us isn't just our drive. It's the people that we allow closest to us. And so that's why for me, community is so important. In fact, I believe community is a self-care tool because it's people in your life who, if you have the right people in your life, they can help you to step into being the best version of you. So it's not a neutral thing. Like community isn't neutral. And the women around you that you invite into your circle, they're either going to be adding to your peace of mind or they're going to be pulling from it. They're either going to remind you that you're worthy or they're going to make you question your worth. And they're either going to be fueling your growth because they're going to be supporting, inspiring, and encouraging and uplifting you, right? Or they're going to quietly drain your energy. When I look back now, I can see how much I longed for a circle where I didn't have to perform, where I could exhale and just be myself. And isn't that what so many of us crave, right? Like a place where we don't have to compete, where we can be celebrated instead of compared, like, oh, look at what she looks like, look how she wears her hair, how she dresses, the car she drives, how she lives in, how much money she makes. I mean, the truth is, all of that is just stuff, right? That's surface level. And so that's why I believe that the communities that we choose today will directly shape the lives that we're building. When you surround yourself with women who support you, you feel braver, right? To take those risks. When you surround yourself with women who encourage you, you'll hear their voices in your head cheering you on, especially on those days when self-doubt is the loudest. And when you surround yourself with women who inspire you, you'll be reminded of what's possible for you. And it goes even deeper than that for me because I believe the right community doesn't just influence your confidence, it protects your energy, it gives you a safe place to land when life feels heavy. It reminds you that you don't have to carry it all on your own, right? Because even though we go through life, we have similar experiences, but a lot of the time we feel like we're doing life alone and we're not. We're not meant to go through life alone. We're meant to do it through community, and we're built for that. And that's why today I've learned to be so intentional around what I want for my life. I no longer try to earn my seat at the table. In fact, I choose the table or I build my own and I invite incredible women to come sit with me. I no longer settle for circles where I feel, just where I'm just being tolerated, right? I choose circles where I feel seen and I feel valued. And I no longer waste my energy performing just to belong. I invest my time and energy into communities that reflect the life I actually want to live. Communities that are built on peace, they're built on purpose, and they're built on legacy, wanting to make the world a better place. And here's the best part. You get to make that choice too. You don't have to keep repeating the same story from your past, right? That's just part of your life. It's just a story. You actually can decide who you allow into your circle, and you can decide whether your community reflects who you were. And if that's the case, then you can step into a new community who supports you and helps you in who you're becoming. So here's my question for you that I want to leave with you with today. Who in your life right now helps you rise and who quietly makes you shrink? And I want you to take a moment with that because the answer to that question can tell you so much about why you feel the way you do about yourself and the way you're living your life. Because maybe you're listening right now, right? And you're realizing, you know what? I'm ready to choose differently. I want to build a life where I trust myself fully. I want to believe that my voice matters. I want to use my time, my energy to my advantage and live a life I truly love. Not one where it's expected of me. Other people have expectations, but I want a life where I truly love it. I want quality of life. And maybe you're also wanting that your relationships in your life, they're in full alignment because you are surrounding yourself with a supportive community. And even your closest relationships in your home feel stronger because you finally feel good about the person that you are and how you're showing up in your world. Why I'm saying this to you now is because I really understand where you are right now. If this is where you find yourself, I've been here. This is not a one and done. I do mindset work all the time because things are going to happen, right? Things are going to trigger and remind me that I once felt a certain way. And it's just to remind myself that that is just a story. It's no longer true for me. And you can do the same. It's why I created my program, the Aligned Self-Mastery Experience, and I'm actually opening it up for 10 women. And the way in is through scheduling a Yes Reset strategy call with me because I want to make sure that this is something that is in alignment for you now. And I want you to feel that way as well. So on the call, we're going to uncover where your energy, your time, and your commitments are out of alignment. And I'll help you get clear on what it would look like to reset and move forward with more peace, freedom, and self-trust. And if during that conversation it feels like the right next step for you, we can talk about whether one of those 10 spots in the program has your name on it. So You'll find the link in the show notes to schedule your call. Now, before I go, I want to leave you with this. You know what I've noticed is how easy it is to build a life that looks good on the outside while we quietly carry weight of not enoughness on the inside, right? So we're smiling at all of the networking events that we go to. We say the right things in the boardroom if we're having a meeting. We show up for our families, our friends, but we're secretly bracing for the moment where we feel invisible again, right? I know I've been there. Like I said, I've experienced that. The truth is, performance works, right? It does until it doesn't, right? If you're always performing, it can get very exhausting because the cracks will start to show. And you'll realize that all the success in the world won't quiet the question that still lingers underneath it all. Do I really belong here? But here's what I want you to sit with. Belonging isn't given to you by someone else's invitation. It's something that I had to learn. I had to learn that I belong in every room that I walk into. Again, it's something that you have to choose for yourself by deciding which rooms that you want to walk into and which tables that you want to sit at and which women you want to surround yourself with. Because at the end of the day, the life that you want, the freedom, the peace, the clarity, the relationships that actually feel good, that is all built by the communities that you choose today, not the ones that shaped you way back when, because the communities that you choose and the way you choose to show up in them, they have the power to change everything. And you start living from alignment rather than being misaligned and not feeling good about your life. So I wanted to leave you with that just to remind you that you have the right to choose. And it just takes one moment of clarity and just realizing that if you can answer the question and just change it from do I really belong here is do I want to be at this table? Do I want to be part of this community? Does this community or this experience build on my life? Does it make me better? Does it shape my life in a much better way? That is where you want to be able to look at your life and decide, is this really supporting me? Or is this something that I actually should take some time and think about? So I just wanted to leave you with that. And I hope that I left you with something to think about. And really, as I said, I wanted to just share my experience with you because it had been something that I had been really thinking about, how my experiences really had shaped who I was, how my fear of being in rooms with successful women, whether they were as successful as I or more successful, especially more successful. I was really uncomfortable feeling like I didn't belong there. And I realized it just came from my experiences and that I had the ability to choose what I wanted to believe. And I now have chosen to believe that I do belong and that no one else has the right but me to tell me that. Anyways, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep believing, and keep designing your extraordinary life one day at a time. Thank you for joining me on Her Extraordinary Life by Design. I hope you've been inspired and empowered by the incredible stories shared on this show. If you enjoyed this episode and the conversations we've had, I would greatly appreciate if you could take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback and support mean the world to me, and it will help others discover the podcast and join our empowering community. Remember to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Together, we can continue to learn from these amazing women, uncover their extraordinary journeys, and be motivated to create our own lives by design. Thank you again for tuning in. Until next time, stay empowered and keep shaping your extraordinary life one day at a time.
Welcome to the Candle Power Hour. Come with us backstage behind the scenes of show business spanning over 4 decades and bringing you the experiences that can only be told by the people who were there.
Our guests are from the A-list, the F-list, and everyone in between. Get set for some of the most insane, hilarious, and inspiring stories you will ever hear.
I'm Mercury.
And I'm Diego.
Your hosts for the Candle Power Hour.
You deserve better health care, and so do we all. Medicine in America is a podcast that shares real stories of patients and doctors reshaping the future, because the revolution in care isn't coming, it's already here. Real stories, real change, a better future for healthcare.
Electricast. Electricast.